Genesis chapter 43, verse 26. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed themselves to him to the earth. Notes, and there goes my heater clicking on again. I hope that doesn't bother you. Again, they fulfilled his dream once again. Verse 27. And he asked them of their welfare, and said, Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he yet alive? Notes, it must have seemed very strange to the sons of Jacob to hear the Lord of Egypt asking very personal questions about the father's health, etc., etc., etc. Verse 28. And they answered, Your servant, our father, is in good health, he is yet alive. And they bowed down their heads and made obeisance, I guess that's how you say it. Notes, it had been approximately 20 years since Joseph had seen his father Jacob. Verse 29. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, Is this your younger brother of whom you spoke unto me? And he said, God be gracious unto you, my son. Notice, this is the first time that Joseph had seen Benjamin. He had not yet been born when Joseph was sold into Egypt. Verse 30. And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep, and he entered into his chamber and wept there. Notes, the scene was quite poignant, not only as it expressed the feelings of the moment, but it presents itself in a much larger way, even as it typifies that coming day when Christ will stand before Israel. At long last, the sons of Jacob will have come home. In fact, in all of history, there has never been anything so drastic as the fall of Jacob, and I speak of the nation of Israel and their rejection of Christ. It eclipses every other happening. You can read more about that in Romans chapter 11. Verse 31. And he washed his face and went out and refrained himself and said, Set on bread. Verse 32. And they set on for him by himself, and for them by themselves, and for the Egyptians which did eat with him by themselves, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is actually an abomination unto the Egyptians. Notes, the meal presented here is indicative of that which will take place at the second coming, when both Jews and Gentiles will fellowship with Christ, of whom Joseph is a type. Verse 33. And they set before him the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men marveled at one another. Notes, they were seated according to their ages, beginning with Reuben, who was the firstborn, unto Benjamin, who was the youngest. How did the Lord of Egypt know these things? Joseph's brothers must have surely pondered this. Verse 34. And he took and sent messes, which is actually food, unto them from before him. But Benjamin's mess was 5 times so much as any of theirs, and they drank and were merry with him. Notes, the number 5 is actually the number of grace of God. The name Benjamin means my strong right hand, typifying Christ. In the coming day when Israel comes back to Christ, even though Christ has a strong right hand, he will deal with Israel in grace, signified by the food given to Benjamin, which was 5 times more than his brothers. We are now at chapter 44, and things are fixing to get really, really interesting. And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put every man's money in his sack's mouth. And put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack's mouth of the youngest, and his grain money. And he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away, they and their asses. And when they were gone out of the city, and not yet far off, Joseph said unto his steward, Up, follow after the men, and when you do overtake them, say unto them, Wherefore have you rewarded evil for good? Notes. The casual reader may think that Joseph is being somewhat harsh respecting this particular episode. However, due to the enormity of the sin of these brothers, with the exception of Benjamin, Joseph must make certain that there has indeed been true repentance in their hearts. Verse 5. Is not this it in which my Lord drinks, and whereby indeed he divines? You have done evil in so doing. And he overtook them, and he spoke unto them these same words. No doubt Joseph had told the men exactly what to say to his brothers. Verse 7. And they said unto him, Wherefore says my Lord these words? God forbid that your servant should do according to this thing. Verse 8. Behold the money which we found in our sacks' mouths, we brought again unto you out of the land of Canaan. How then should we steal out of your Lord's house silver or gold? Verse 9. With whomsoever of your servants it be found, both let him die, and we also will be my Lord's bondsmen. Notes, they are right and they are wrong. They are right in that they didn't steal the cup, but they are wrong in that it's not in one of the sacks. Verse 10. And he said, Now also let it be according unto your words. He with whom it is found shall be my servant. Notes, and in this case it actually does mean slave. And you shall be blameless. Notes, the same steward who has greeted them previously now stands before them as it regards the cup that is supposedly missing. He is the one who had placed the cup in Benjamin's sack, so he knew exactly where it was. Verse 11. Then they speedily took down every man his sack to the ground, and opened every man his sack. And he searched and began at the eldest, and left at the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. No surprise. Then they rent their clothes, and loaded every man his ass, and returned to the city. And Judah and his brethren came to Joseph's house, for he was yet there, and they fell before him on the ground. Notes. Joseph's determined detention of Simeon and afterwards of Benjamin was skillfully designed so as to find out if they were indifferent to the cries of a captive brother and the tears of a bereaved father. Verse 15, And Joseph said unto them, What deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man as I can certainly divine? And Judah said, What shall we say unto my Lord, that shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we, and he also with whom this cup is found. Notes. The distress of Judah and the others shows that they were no longer in heart the men of some 20 years back. None can teach like God. He alone can produce in the conscience the true sense of sin and bring the soul down into the profound depths of its own condition in his presence. The iniquity of which Judah spoke was that of the selling of their brother so many years before. They can only think of this one great commanding sin, the rejection of their brother Joseph. And we'll pick up in Genesis chapter 44, verse 17. Thank you much.